Hello, hello. This is Patty Joe. It's been a couple of days, and it's going to be a couple more because I work night shift tonight and I work night shift tomorrow night. So that's a lot. That's a lot. I try to get up and just can't drag myself out of bed. So let's see where we are. Finishing up day 8, I hope. Well. Okay, she just went to break. Okay. That's where we left off. Okay.
Order he would like them in and when he wants them here.
They're talking about
and
his
again,
witnesses.
depending on how this shakes out, I think
This is going to be exhausting. Okay. Witnesses. So, even though he had the list of the state's witnesses, and we know this because he based his list off of people that were on their list that they chose not to call for whatever reason. Language barrier, repetitive testimony, too scared, whatever, the reason was to choose not. So they had a list. They chose a certain number from that list. He actually chose the rest of them for his list. He doesn't really have a strategy for that other than they must be hiding something, conspiracy theory in my book. That's my opinion of his legal I don't know what you would even call it, because he's got no credibility. So he's got no, I don't know, there's no basis for what he did other than, I just think he had fear. He did fear. Okay. So, because he is incarcerated at this time, he's in jail, he needs help doing the subpoenas and organizing. Now, when you get a subpoena, generally you're told on the subpoena it's the beginning of the trial date, but when you call in, they tell you, we don't need you today, we'll need you tomorrow, call tonight. And then, or whatever the case may be, you don't actually have to go and park yourself there. Now, at the fire department, they generally didn't pay any attention to us, and we did have to go park ourselves there. But that wasn't so bad because then they would dismiss us and would have the day off. So, if it was late enough, of course. And he just thinks everybody, because he's so narcissistic, should come and collect. But the state is going to help him serve the subpoenas and organize them. And all they're really asking him to do is say, I don't know, the order, and they're going to estimate how many people per day so that they can tell them which days to come. In his mind, this is giving away some Perry Mason, LA Law thing. So this just gets deeper and deeper as we go. But let's watch the temper tantrum unfold. But that's the basis as far as I've seen and I understand.
probably about this time tomorrow we'll be in better shape to know if we would perhaps get to defense witnesses Wednesday afternoon or just start Thursday morning with defense witnesses. If he lets us know the order he wants them in, we can start making those arrangements on his behalf. But right now they all know that they're essentially on call for more towards the end of the week.
Right. And if my memory serves, the witness who would be called out of order, is that Juan Marquez?
Yes.
All right. So you should probably be ready to have that person, because that's when we have the interpreter available. Tomorrow sometime. I presume you still want to call that witness? All right, and so just be prepared to do your direct when we can fit it in at the appropriate break, and depending on where we end with witnesses tonight. And then if you would.
Also, that is not a trick. The man requires an interpreter. His first language is Spanish or another language. Probably Spanish, it sounds like. And because I think they've said that once or twice. So he can come when the resource is available. And since both of them are requiring the resource, they're doing it at a time so that they can call the resource once. It costs money. This stuff just isn't free.
Let the state know the order of your witnesses, so we can have them come at different times so that they're not all here for days waiting to be called.
With
all respect,
the prosecution didn't tell me the order of their witnesses. Why do I have to tell them the order of mine?
Because they're assisting you in getting them to court. They've served the subpoenas on your behalf, and as a courtesy to those witnesses, I need you to provide. I don't even care if it's the order, but if you say these 3 will be called in the morning, these 3 will be in the afternoon, that would be okay with me. I just want to be able to tell those witnesses through the DA, you 3 will be Wednesday afternoon, you 3 will be whatever the number is, will be Thursday morning, and the rest Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, whatever it may be.
I get what you're saying, but it's still, from what I'm hearing from the prosecution, they're not sure exactly when they'll be resting their case. So
I think they're trying to rest their case sooner rather than later. But
so if you have groups of people, these 3 are first, these 3 will be kind of second. Then if there's time in the afternoon, they can call them on the morning of that. Oh my God, he's such an arrogant idiot.
But they have some witnesses to get through, and what they're telling us is that will be sometime on Wednesday, given the pause that they will take in their case to call Mr. Marquez so that he can be questioned by you with the interpreter.
So wouldn't it make more sense to start calling my witnesses Thursday then?
No, you should be ready to go Wednesday afternoon. I'm not going to take a break for that. You should be ready to go. I mean, if we get done at 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, that might be a different story, but it sounds like we should be able to call witnesses. Of course, you will need to let me know if you're going to give an opening statement. You had deferred that, and that could adjust some of the timing. But
oh God, Daryl,
so I need you to provide that order to the state tomorrow when you come into court, so that they can work with those witnesses.
I'd probably say I'm not going to provide a specific order. I'm not going to do that.
Well, then you need to tell which day, like morning and afternoon, and how many witnesses per. I'm not going to just bring them in all at the same time and make them wait. That's not, that would be a discourtesy to those witnesses who you are calling. So I want to have some idea of what your game.
The man doesn't care if he's being discourteous. He thinks everybody should be at his beck and call.
Plan is for them.
I get that, but I'm still confused on. I essentially didn't know who they was calling in order.
That's not really relevant at this moment, sir. So I need you to provide the order.
I'm not going to provide the order.
Or by start Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday afternoon, unless they're very short. Just keep in mind we generally have about, when we start at 8:30, we go till about noon. Probably start up an hour and 15 minutes after the lunch, so you have another couple of hours. So you should be able to know about how long you're going to question them, and just give us who those are for each of those blocks. And then be ready for Mr. Marquez tomorrow.
Thanks.
I'll be ready for that, but
All right.
I'll probably have an idea of who I think should come in, but I'm not going to provide an order.
Well, if he wants our assistance, Your Honor, we will do that. Otherwise, he can be responsible for getting these witnesses here himself.
You've got to
Look
cooperate
at
with this
Maisie.
process, or they're assisting you. Otherwise, you're going to be responsible for telling these witnesses when to come in.
And so
You could tell that the attorney Basie, when she heard that they were going to help, the state was going to help, she probably went back to that office and just went right into Susan Oliver's office and said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?"
how am I supposed to do that?
Well, then you
That's
should
not
cooperate
anybody's
with the state
problem.
and their assistance to help you, sir.
I'm not going to give a specific order.
Sir, are you willing to provide the who the witnesses are by half day?
I just said that.
All right,
I
then
said I'm
that's
not
what I
gonna-
need by tomorrow
I said I'm
morning.
not giving an order. Is
That's
what
fine.
I said.
I'm okay with that, and the state will be
Nobody-
okay with that because I said they'll be okay with that.
We're
So
okay, Judge.
He really thinks they're afraid of his defense. You have no defense for what you did. There's no reason for what you did. Ugh.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
So what about what's supposed to be going on today? How late do we plan to go today?
We'll have to see how long this witness lasts and if we can start the next witness. I 4:30, 5 o'clock, maybe even 5:30. We'll see. So with that, let's bring the jury out.
Are we going to address subject matter jurisdiction at some point?
Not beyond what I've already addressed, sir.
Which you addressed it, you didn't prove it, you didn't verify it. It's not verified proof that you have subject matter jurisdiction yet. It's not been proven on the record.
She's laughing at him.
Is that a judicial determination, Your Honor, that you're not going to answer that?
Your request is noted for the record. I've already addressed it.
Is it noted for the record? It should be noted for the record also that's a tacit agreement.
All rise for the jury, please. Thank you.
We already been riding. Wondering when we go get the answer to that subject matter jurisdiction, though.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Attorney Opper, you may call your next witness.
Thank you. The state calls Officer Leha.
Good afternoon, Officer Leha. If you would please make your way to my witness stand. When you get there, please remain standing, raise your right hand. My clerk, Teresa, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat. And I should say the witness stand. I don't have ownership over it. But in any event, state your first and last names for the record.
First name Draylen, last name Leha.
Could you spell both?
Draelon, last name Leha, Leija.
Oh my goodness, what a long name. Okay. Let's see. Here's a comment. Evil angry garden gnome elf. Oh my goodness. Christine Covey. Good one. Good one. Good one. He's got them all tongue-tied. Okay.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. Your witness.
All right, thank you, Officer Leha. Sir, I'd like to direct your attention to the evening of November 21, 2021. Were you working on duty that afternoon?
Yes.
All right, I should ask, where do you work?
City of Waukesha Police Department.
How long have you been a police officer?
A little over 2 years.
Okay. So on that evening, were you aware that the parade was taking place in downtown Waukesha?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you work the parade?
No, ma'am.
Do you recall what time it was when you came on duty, sir?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
I believe it was a little after 5.
Were you scheduled to work that evening?
Yes.
Okay. And around the time of 12 a.m. midnight, so now I think we're getting into the next day of November 22 of 2021, were you asked to assist detectives at Waukesha Memorial Hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you go to that location?
I did.
And did you meet with anybody there?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you meet with?
I met with Detective Jay Carpenter and acting detective at the time, Detective Stern.
Did they ask you to assist them in some fashion?
Yes, ma'am.
What did they ask you to do?
Miss Ruby, yes, it is funny how he always pretends to be so busy writing while they're questioning him, and then he is never prepared for nothing. Prepared for nothing.
I was tasked,
Overruled. You may
He's
answer.
laughing at him.
I was tasked with transporting Mr. Brooks to the Muskego Police Department.
Okay. So at this point, Mr. Brooks is in custody.
Yes, ma'am.
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
And the person you were asked to drive to the Muskego Police Department, do you see him in this courtroom here today?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you identify him, please? And if Mr. Brooks would please remove his mask, Your Honor?
Objection. I don't consent to
Please
being
remove
called
your
that
mask.
name.
Oh, thank you. You were.
For the 100th
Apologies.
time.
Go ahead.
It's the black male sitting at the table with the black suit and the mask that he just put back on.
Where did you first meet?
Oh, hold on. The record should reflect he did point to the defense table, and the record will reflect he identified him. Go ahead.
Okay. Where did you first meet Mr. Brooks?
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
You say,
The Waukesha Memorial Hospital, the police hold room.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Mr. Brooks was talking over you.
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled. Go ahead, sir.
At the Waukesha Memorial Hospital in the police hold room.
All right. And where were you going to take him?
To the Muskego Police Department.
Why?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Detective Carpenter said that he was going to be there so that he can question him sometime in the near future.
Is the Muskego Police Department located in the city of Waukesha?
No,
Objection,
ma'am.
relevancy.
Overruled. He may answer.
No, ma'am.
Why didn't you take him back to your police department?
Objection.
Overruled. You may answer.
At the time, we were at the Annex, which is our older police department. Our police department that we usually report out of was being renovated, so we didn't have any holding cell.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did the Muskego Police Department have a holding cell at their facility?
Objections.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, ma'am.
And they were willing to house Mr. Brooks there under mutual aid?
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So you put him in your squad car?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Tell us about that, your drive.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
So I put Mr. Brooks in my squad car. We left the hospital I took custody of him around 12:18 a.m. We typed in my GPS to the Muskego Police Department. We left the hospital. We had to go eastbound in Wisconsin, which is a road that's parallel to Main Street where the parade was taking place.
Okay.
Once we passed while going eastbound in Wisconsin, there was multiple marked squad cars, so they're with their emergency lights on.
Do you know what they were doing?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
They were blocking traffic, investigating an incident that transpired earlier that evening.
Okay. Is it just, excuse me, is it just you and Mr. Brooks in the squad car?
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, it was just me and Daryl Brooks in the squad car.
Okay.
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Why do you keep saying that?
Overruled.
And as you traveled in the area of Wisconsin Avenue, did Mr. Brooks make any statements?
Objection. I don't consent to being called that
Oh
name.
my gosh. Can someone gag? This would have been a good reason for the gag, on the man. Okay, I'm sorry. But I can be repetitive. I'm an old woman. I've earned the right to be that. To repeat all my stupid jokes. I've earned the right to do that. Just one cut in here. There was a comment, someone, I believe, I passed it by, so I don't remember. They say that I hope I like my job. I do like my job. It is overall really nice place to be. It's not like an Animal Farm situation. I think there's always a little bit of telling on each other and trying to one-up each other a little bit in every situation. But this is a very open place, and there's a lot going on, and they're real people. But I thought it would be hard for me to deal with people who are at the prime of their career when I'm unable to care for patients any longer. And it is a little, but one thing, and I started way at the bottom doing interfacility transports in a PLS little van in the middle of the night, just like everybody else. And I remember feeling like nobody cared how many we did or how great it was or how efficient we were. Nobody said, hey, did you get a cup of coffee tonight? Or hey, did you get a meal? Or do you need a 15-minute break? Or should I, extend this ETA for you? And I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person who, when the sending facilities are calling saying, where are they? Where are they? And they say, well, let them go to the bathroom and I'm sure they'll be upstairs quite soon. To remind people that there's people on the other end of that question. Yeah. I don't want to turn into Terrell Brooks. I don't consent to be called that name.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
Yes, Mr. Brooks said once we were going eastbound in Wisconsin, and I quote, he said, damn, it looks like they were dealing with something heavy.
Okay. Did you reply to him in any way?
No.
Did he continue to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
What else did he say?
He asked me if there was a basketball game going on or something tonight, and to which I replied, I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you continue on transporting him to the Muskego Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point, were you responsible for watching over him at the Muskego Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. Your answer may stand. Go ahead and just wait until I rule on the
Okay, I'm
objections,
sorry.
please. That's okay.
How long did you watch him for?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled.
I believe we got to the jail around closer to 1 a.m. I watched him up until about 7 a.m.
What kinds of things do you remember he did overnight?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. He may answer.
I know that he was fed around 2 a.m. He slept most of the night. He got up around 5 a.m., asked for water. I got him water.
Another lie, because he says he didn't.
And he asked to make a phone call to his daughter.
Okay. Did you allow that?
No.
Did you said it appeared he was sleeping throughout most of the night?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. Did you
At any-
answer?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Other than asking to call his daughter, did he make any other statements to you that you can recall?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
I remember he made some complaints that the room was too bright. He wanted me to dim the room. Yeah, that's all that I remember. He
Okay. Like the lights in the room were too bright?
correct in the cell, holding cell.
Did you turn off the lights for him?
No.
Objection, leading.
Overruled. His answer may stand.
And were you relieved by another officer then later that morning?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
Hey, Cross.
Yep.
That's a yes?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You said that you recall checking every 30 minutes on doing like well-being checks. right?
That's correct.
And how do you know for sure that the suspect was asleep?
I don't know for sure if you were sleeping. I know that the cover was over your head, and every time I go and check in on you, I could see that your chest was rising up and down from underneath the blanket. So it's a possibility that you were sleeping. It's a possibility that you weren't. I know that you were under cover, so it appeared that you were asleep most of the night.
So it'd be fair to say you're not sure.
Answer stands, Your Honor. It's asked and answered.
Objection.
Overruled. He may answer.
Could have been sleep. You probably was asleep. You probably wasn't, but the blanket was over your head most of the night.
And do you recall why the suspect was not allowed a phone call?
I was told that you had to wait for Detective Jay Carpenter to talk to you.
Do you know if that's standard practice?
Not sure if it's standard practice or not, but just following his instruction, because he was going to be doing some investigation.
Would you say it's fair to say that usually a suspect being detained is allowed a phone call at some point?
Relevance.
Grounds.
Relevant, sir?
Grounds.
No. Why do you believe it's relevant?
Why would contact to the outside world be restricted?
All right, it's I'll rule that it's not relevant. Sustain the objection. Next question.
Do you recall what time you got to, I think it was, you said, the hospital to pick up the suspect?
Yes, I left at 12:10. I got to the hospital around 12:18.
To the best of your recollection, do you recall being given any information at that time about the suspect being questioned?
I don't recall if I was given any information on you being questioned at that time.
This guy has no material relevance to anything that would point to his innocence or mitigate his guilt at all. I don't even need to posit he's going to take so long, for real.
And you referred to a police hold room inside of the hospital?
That's correct.
So it's not unusual for someone to be detained in the police hold room inside of the hospital.
That's correct. There's an active investigation going on.
So would that be the only time if during an active investigation?
Usually, someone from the outside coming to the police hold room, yes, for an active investigation.
And do you recall where in the hospital this police hold room is located?
In the hospital.
Do you recall where in the hospital it's located?
It's usually by where the police officers park their vehicles through the ambulance bay, straight ahead, and it's the second to last door on the right.
to the best of your knowledge, do you know if those police hold rooms have cameras?
I'm not sure.
Before that particular incident, had you ever been in the police hold room in that hospital?
Yep. Yes, sorry.
And you stated that detectives informed you that they would need to speak with the detainee before any phone calls would be made.
That's correct.
To the best of your recollection, did they explain why to you?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
Calls for speculation.
Grounds.
I'm sorry, calls for hearsay
Grounds.
and speculation.
Are you offering it for the truth of the matter
Yep.
asserted? Then it's hearsay and it's.
And the detainee was turned over to Officer Paulson after, I'm guessing at the end of your shift.
That's correct.
What does that have to do with
Do
mitigating?
you recall if the cell the detainee was sleeping in that night had cameras?
I'm not sure.
You know, I've never like been under arrest in jail or anything, but I've picked up people who were in jail or incarcerated or in prison. I've been to those situations. 100% knew I was on camera every second. 100% I knew. There was no question. Why does this mitigate your guilt? Does this prove to any kind of doubt about your guilt? What do you have a point, Daryl? Can you get to it? Because I'm getting older as this by the second, for sure.
Do you recall who did the booking process at the Muskego Police Department?
Yes, I believe it was Lieutenant Andrika and Officer Klink of the Muskego Police Department.
To the best of your recollection, do you recall why one of those officers weren't doing the well-being checks?
Because you were in our custody.
Who cares? Who cares?
you recall when you did your report? The date of it?
I don't recall the exact day I did my report.
Was it that same evening or was it sometime after?
When you say the same evening, what date are you talking?
The same evening or morning that you ended up having to do the well-being checks at the Muskego Police Department.
I don't recall if I did it that day, but it most definitely was done shortly after.
Shortly after, meaning a few days or a week or so?
Oh my God.
A few days.
Who cares?
You don't recall if it was the 29th of November of 2021?
Oh, he said he doesn't know.
I don't recall.
I can't today.
When you were dispatched to the Waukesha Memorial Hospital, did you observe any FBI agents at the scene?
At the scene of the hospital?
Yes.
No.
So to the best of your recollection, it was only the two detectives that you made contact with?
Yes.
Can you explain what the mobile audio video recording system is?
It's an in-squad camera that records outside of the squad car, so like in front of the squad car in the prisoner compartment. And it's a microphone that we put to our vest or on our person to record audio statements.
So it records and it's video and audio.
Correct.
Did it record the detainee during your transport?
Yes, it did.
Besides the statements that you made reference to, did you observe or hear anything other than those statements?
What do you mean? Can you clarify that for me?
Did you observe anything strange or while the recording was taking place?
I don't know what you mean by strange.
Like, did you notice any strange movements by the detainee? Anything that would alarm you in any way?
Nothing that would alarm me, no.
Did you know the extent of the investigation at the time you were dispatched to Waukesha Memorial?
No, my only task was to transport you to the Muskego Police Department.
Which makes me wonder again, why are you interested in this guy at all? His one and only job was to escort you someplace and to ensure your well-being for a period of time. That was it. Those were the only two things no, I said one and only, but the only two things he was tasked to do. Two things. This is not going to break the case, but that breaks the case. Let's send him home. You are so stupid. You ever had that highlight in that attorney's office?
No further questions.
Any redirect?
Nothing else. Thank you, Judge.
No, because there's
you.
nothing
You
this
sit
guy
down.
barely could offer.
Go ahead and call your
anything.
next
He just
witness
makes
then,
a
please.
link in the chain. He
Detective
makes
Jay
a link in
Carpenter.
the chain. Sorry, he even knows it. Laughing at Daryl. Love it. Love it. Wasted 20 minutes. Jeez. Daryl did this because he had no time to lose. Tell me he didn't know what was coming up.
Good afternoon, Detective Carpenter. If you would please make your way to the witness stand, which is to my right. It is up one riser. When you get there, please remain standing. Raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, will swear you
Oh,
in.
here we go. Now we're going to see some meltdown. This is the guy questioning him. This is one of the, Daryl's going to be so mad.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat. The first thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
Sure. My name is Detective Jay Carpenter. First name spelled Jay. Last name spelled Carpenter.
Go ahead.
Sir, how are you employed?
I am employed as a detective with the City of Waukesha Police Department.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
18 years?
Have all those years been with the City of Waukesha Police Department?
Yes.
How long have you been detective?
Almost 5 years.
Direct your attention to November 21st of last year. Were you working on that day?
Yes, I was.
Were you working the parade?
I had actually been part of the parade. I marched in the parade as part of our Honor Guard unit and had completed my duty before the incident commenced.
So this is the City of Waukesha annual holiday parade.
Correct.
And you say that after you finished the parade route, where did you go?
So I went back to the City of Waukesha Police Department after I completed my part of the parade.
And did you receive information while you were at the City of Waukesha Police Department regarding something that had happened at the parade?
Objection leading.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
I did. I changed out of my Honor Guard uniform and I was confronted by Officer Daniel Malo. He was working as a desk officer for the department that day. Officer Malo explained that a vehicle had driven through the parade route down in downtown Waukesha, that there were approximately 30 to 40 people down, many severely injured, some possibly deceased, and that there was also an officer shooting involved in the whole event.
What did you do as a result of receiving that information?
At that point, I went on duty and began heading towards the downtown area.
Where did you go specifically?
So when I headed out, there was a lot of radio traffic. It was very chaotic, very confusing. It was certainly like nothing I've ever experienced before, as far as the radio traffic. the event kind of began to mold into two different forms at that point, in that there were numerous officers calling for ambulances in the downtown area for the injured, but dispatch was also beginning to provide information that there was an individual in the area of the 500 block of Elizabeth Street, which is about a quarter of a mile off the parade route, that was loitering, and it was believed that may be the suspect, so I headed in that direction.
Now, prior to heading in that direction, did you have any information as to why this person in that area would be a suspect?
Objection leading.
Overruled. He may answer.
Yes, ma'am. A description had been provided of a possible suspect, and the descriptions being provided by the dispatch of the individual now in this area were comparable, nearly identical to the descriptions I was hearing of the driver from the parade incident.
What did you do then?
As I was searching the area, I heard over the police radio that officers from a separate jurisdiction had come in contact with the suspect and that he was in custody. I proceeded over to Elizabeth Street, where the suspect, who was identified in the investigation as Daryl Brooks, was already in custody.
Okay. Now, you stated that the information that you initially received with regard to the person involved's physical description, do you recall what that was?
Objection leading.
Overruled. He may answer.
Information that I heard over police radio was an African-American male, blue jeans, and a red T-shirt.
So what did you do after receiving this information about a potential person in custody?
I responded to the immediate area. Mr. Brooks at that point was already in custody. I don't recall if he was outside a squad being searched, but he was handcuffed and already effectively in custody at that point. He was placed in the rear of a City Waukesha police car, where he was taken into custody for loitering, as well as being a suspect at that point as the operator of the vehicle that went through the parade route.
Objection, I don't consent to being called that name, for the record.
Overruled. Your answer stands. Go ahead. Next question.
At the time that you made contact with this individual, did you have any information about the vehicle that had been used during the parade?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Yes, a red SUV. That was actually a red Ford Escape, specifically.
And did you have any information if that car had been located at the time that you went to the Elizabeth Street address?
Yes, it had already been located.
Did you have any information about that red SUV prior to going to Elizabeth Street?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
The information I recall having is that the vehicle was parked over on Maple Avenue, which is about 2.5 to 3 blocks west of Elizabeth Street, where Mr. Brooks was located and taken into custody.
Objection, I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled.
Did you have the opportunity to speak with an individual who was identified as Daryl Brooks at that Elizabeth Street address?
Called that name.
Go ahead. You may answer.
I don't believe I spoke with him at that address, but Mr. Brooks was transported to our substation located on Les Paul Parkway in the City of Waukesha, where I had opportunity to speak with him.
Did you see him at the Elizabeth Street address?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you see him in the court today?
I do.
I'd ask the court to ask Mr. Brooks to remove his mask.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Can you identify him by where he's seated and what he's wearing?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Brooks is seated to my left, wearing a dark-colored suit jacket, multicolored tie, surgical mask on his face, shaved head, and he did have a beard at the time he took his mask off.
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
It will reflect. Thank you.
Sir, as you see Mr. Brooks today, does he look different than he did on November 21st of last year?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, ma'am.
How?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
How?
At the time of the
The question is how? Leading.
the time of the incident, Mr. Brooks had longer hair, a braided style hair that probably went midway down his back.
How about facial wise?
He had a beard at that time, but it's a little bit shorter now. It was a little bit thicker and longer at the time.
So you stated that the defendant was transported to a substation?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. And do you recall who transported him?
Specialist Mark Howard.
Did you follow Specialist Howard to the substation?
Yes, I did.
Upon either, should I say, at the scene, did you obtain items that were located on the defendant's person?
Yes, I did.
What did they consist of?
So the items I received that were on Mr. Brooks' person at the time of his arrest, there were several items. One of them was a Wisconsin photo identification card. So it had a picture on the ID card that I recognized as being Mr. Brooks based on the fact I was with him at this time. The name on that identification card was Darrell Edward Brooks Jr., his date of birth being February 21st, 1982. There was also a green Wisconsin Quest card with Mr. Brooks' name on it, a silver American Express debit or credit card with Mr. Brooks' name on it, 2 Visa debit cards, one black, one white, both which had Mr. Brooks' name on it, and then there was a Georgia EBT card which had the name of Mr. Brooks' girlfriend on it.
Other than the identifying information that you just testified to, is anything else turned over to you that was removed from Darrell Brooks?
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name and it's leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, ma'am. There was $4 cash, but also a Ford ignition key.
Now, you stated that there was a suspect vehicle that had been located.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any information prior to your discussions with the defendant about who the owner of that vehicle was?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, I did.
And who was the owner of that vehicle?
A female by the name of Dawn Woods.
And do you recall what her address was?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
4014 North 19th Street in the city of Milwaukee.
So 19th Street, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection. Leading witness.
Overruled. The answer may stand.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 172. That's going to appear on the screen in front of you. Before we do that, these identifiers that you located for Darrell Brooks, did you take a picture of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name for the 100th time.
For the 100th time.
Overruled.
Do you say it like that?
And let me know when you see something in your...
I see it.
Okay. Do you recognize these items as those items you just described as having been removed from the defendant's person?
Yes, I do.
I'd ask the court to admit this exhibit into evidence and to publish it for the jury.
Objection. Relevancy.
Objection is overruled. Exhibit 172 is received. Permission to publish is granted.
If you can specifically zoom in on the Wisconsin ID card. The address on that Wisconsin identification card, is that the set?
Okay, sorry. First of all, he is 5'8", weighs 140 pounds. What a little man. Looks like a troll. Looks like a troll. And he's subscribing to this identification. If he was really soft-set, he would not do that. I just thought we all needed a good laugh.
Same address that you recited for Dawn Woods?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And what was the date that that card was issued?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
June 14th, 2021.
And the picture on the identification card, would that be consistent or inconsistent with what the defendant looked like on November 21st of last year?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
It's almost exactly what he looks like.
Now, as you were at the substation, what did you do that can be removed? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
For the most part, what we were doing down there is obtaining basic booking information. So I confirmed Mr. Brooks' first name, middle name, last name, date of birth. I obtained an emergency contact for him, phone numbers, whether he was working or not, going to school. Obtained information about his tattoos, piercings, things of that nature. Personal identification information.
Okay. And who did he say his emergency contact was?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
Mr. Brooks indicated his emergency contact person was Dawn Woods.
And what relationship was Dawn Woods to him?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
It is Mr. Brooks' mother.
And did you subsequently obtain a phone number for Dawn Woods?
I did.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
What is that phone number, if you recall?
Objection, relevancy.
414-610-2153.
Now, when you asked the defendant for his name, what did he tell you his name was?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled.
I believe he indicated it was Darrell, D-A-R-R-E-L-L, which, in speaking with him, and I can confirm, seeing him today, Darrell Brooks or Darrell Brooks are one and the same. They are the same person.
Did you become aware of any video evidence that was collected in the downtown area during the parade, capturing a picture of the person who drove the red SUV through the parade?
Objection, leading.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And you said you saw that?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to ask that Exhibit 120, which has been previously admitted into evidence, be published for the jury.
Go ahead.
Is that the photographic evidence that you had just testified to?
Objection.
Overruled.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And do you recall approximately, was this the car being driven while the parade, in the midst of the parade, after the parade, or before the parade, if you know?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
So the photo we're looking at right here is right in the middle of the parade. So right now, the vehicle is within the parade route while the parade is ongoing.
And were you able to positively identify the driver of that vehicle?
Yes, ma'am,
Objection,
I was.
hearsay.
Overruled.
Who is the driver of that vehicle?
The driver of the vehicle is Darrell Brooks.
Thank you. Approximately how long?
You done with this exhibit? I'm sorry.
I am, yes.
Thank you.
How long were you at the substation?
Probably about 2 to 2.5 hours.
Why were you there versus anywhere else?
So at this particular time, the department was in a transition. Our original building was under construction. The building we were primarily working out of did not have a booking room, did not have a place to take prisoners, so we had to go down to the substation instead of our own actual police department.
Other than collecting the information that you had previously told us about, including emergency contact information, name, things like that, what else were you doing at the substation?
Objection, leading.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Mainly at that time, just waiting for further information as to what was going to be done next. Like I say, the scene was very, very chaotic. I know there were so many victims out there, they didn't even have enough ambulances to transport them all. So officers, it took, I feel like, probably hours to really get it under control. So I was just waiting on more information from Detective Casey, who had been assigned as lead, to determine what steps would be appropriate next. Is just being there with Mr. Brooks and making sure he was safe and remained in custody. I didn't have a real good idea due to the chaos of what was going on away from where I was.
Now, you had testified about some of the property that was recovered from the defendant, and you stated that one of the items was a card in the name of Erica Patterson. Do you recall that?
Objection. He did not say who was in the name of.
Sustained. Please rephrase.
Actually, if we can pull up Exhibit 172 again.
Objection. Hearsay.
There's no question yet, but
And if you can zoom in on the Georgia EBT card. Whose name is on that card?
Erica
Objection,
Patterson.
Leedy.
overruled. Go ahead, you can answer that again.
Erica Patterson.
Did you, at the time that you were at the substation, have any information regarding an Erica Patterson and her relationship to Daryl Brooks?
Objection that I don't consent to being called that name.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
Objection is hearsay.
Overruled.
Not at that time, no.
Did you later learn of a relationship between the defendant and Erica Patterson?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
And what was that relationship?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Ms. Patterson was a significant other or girlfriend to Mr. Brooks and mother of one of his children.
Objection, not girlfriend.
Overruled. The jury will disregard that last statement as Mr. Brooks is not testifying at the moment.
Well, keep it true.
Now, when you made contact with Daryl Brooks or while you're making contact with Daryl Brooks at the substation, did he complain of any injuries?
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name.
Here we go.
I
Overruled.
think
You
the
may answer.
prosecution is trying to be funny at this point.
Yes, ma'am, he did.
Hold on, I didn't hear the last thing, but I believe it was commentary. So just state your objection and I'll rule on it. It's been overruled. You may answer.
Yes, ma'am, he did. He complained of two injuries, one to his knee, but primarily and mostly of an injury to what was his right shoulder.
Did he say how that occurred?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Did he say?
Yes, he did. Mr. Brooks told us that his shoulder was injured when he was arrested, indicating the arresting officers slammed him to the ground.
Did you have the opportunity at any point in this investigation to review body?
Allow me to reenact slamming to the ground. This is hilarious. I'm going to reenact it. Huh, what'd I do? What'd I do? Oh my God. Slam me to the ground and went pop, pop. I can't wait till we get to hear him say pop.
Camera footage from Officer Rebecca Carpenter,
Yes, ma'am.
and that was at the residence where the defendant was taken into custody.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Did you see any unlawful use of force on the defendant during that time?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Did he see it?
No, ma'am.
Let's hear
In
it.
fact, there was no force used at all. Mr. Brooks was given verbal directions by officers to get down onto the ground, and he did so entirely on his own power.
Based upon his complaints, however, was the decision made to transport him for medical clearance?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did you transport the defendant?
Waukesha Memorial Hospital.
Do you know approximately what time you arrived there?
I believe, I don't remember the exact time, it was sometime, I believe it was between about 8 and 9 p.m.
Upon entering, who was with you and Mr. Brooks?
Objection, I don't consent to being called that name. Misleading the witness.
Overruled as to both. You may answer.
Detective Ben Stern.
Was he partnering with you in this part of the investigation?
Yes, ma'am, he was.
Okay. And when you entered the hospital, what observations, if any, did you make?
Entering the hospital, we we escorted Mr. Brooks, to a room so that he could receive medical clearance. I know there were some individuals from the parade that were injured in nearby rooms. I didn't really see many of them, but I knew they were close by. So we escorted Mr. Brooks into a room, trying to keep away from the victims so as to not make the incident any more tension-filled than it already was.
How busy was it at the hospital when you brought Mr. Brooks in?
Objection leading.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Extremely. There were victims due to the mass amount of casualties, many of which, survived but still needed extensive medical attention. It was very busy. Many of the victims were taken to alternate hospitals because Waukesha Memorial could not handle the amount of patients that were coming in.
Now, approximately how long did you spend with Mr. Brooks at Waukesha Memorial Hospital?
Objection. I was consent to being called in.
Overruled.
Probably about 4 hours.
Is that in addition to the time that you would have spent with him at the substation?
Yes, ma'am.
Leading.
Overruled.
What was his demeanor?
Extremely calm. If I would describe it, I guess, to put it in context for the court, very similar to mine right now. The conversations I had with him, as far as getting his identification info and such, he talked to me as calmly as I'm speaking now. Based on his body language, his tone of voice, his attitude, you'd have never known he had done something or was in custody for having done something so serious.
Let's put this together, because let's see, I worked as a paramedic in the fire department through COVID. I've worked mass casualty scenes. I can tell you, even in the most controlled part or section of those scenes which I've worked in, which we would call a green section, or a section where we were trying to get students matched up with parents after an incident at a school, and we were completely off-site from what happened. This is chaotic, and the number of people gathering and trying to organize is huge. And he caused all that. Yet he can saunter into the hospital emergency room as if he is entitled to some kind of, grand care for his fake injury. The level of disgust is, I can't even, I can feel it in the back of my throat. I just want to hurl. It is so, just to see. And I have transported victims of violent crimes and then been called to go back in service to transport the perpetrators right after. And their entitlement level is enormous. I don't know how we've done this in arson. How did Don raise such a monster that he could walk into the aftermath of what he created and feel entitled to get medical attention for free for a fake injury that he's lying about? Just beyond mind blown. I just don't understand it. I don't.
Did he ask you why he was in custody at the substation?
Yes.
And what did you tell him?
At that point, I simply told Mr. Brooks it was a loitering investigation and possible disorderly conduct.
Now, you just testified that he was a suspect in the parade mass casualty incident. Why didn't you tell him that?
At that time, I didn't want to make Mr. Brooks one, overly anxious. Two, there was a lot of information. Initially, I still didn't know. It was initially, as part of the chaos, I believe at one point we were actually looking for as many as four people. So I didn't know how deeply he was or was not involved. It was believed that and known that he was somehow involved and knew something. So before I even addressed those issues, one, I wanted to make sure I knew all the facts and had as much information as I could, more than anything for the integrity of the case.
When you talk about the integrity of the case and your discussions with him, did the defendant appear to know what was going on around him? When I say that, I guess, was he aware of where he was, who you were, things like that?
Objection, speculative.
As to the way it was rephrased in the second half of that, I will allow it. You may answer.
Yes, he did. He seemed, he was alert. When asked questions, like, for example, his about phone number, his emergency contact, the answers were consistent with the question asked. He did not have slurred speech. He did not show any signs of being under the influence or in mental crisis.
Did your opinion change at any time while you were with him on November 21st?
Objection, vague.
Overruled. You may answer.
No, it did not.
Now, during the 4 hours that you were at the hospital, were you, do you continue to complain about shoulder pain?
Yes, he did.
Were his actions always consistent with his expression of the pain in the shoulder?
Objection, speculative.
Overruled. You may answer.
No, they were not.
Can you describe for the jury what you mean by that?
Objection, speculative. How can he know how somebody's body is feeling?
Had the body.
Overruled. He may answer, given as long as he answers with his understanding. Or what
Observations is what I was saying.
Observation.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's what you said. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So Mr. Brooks, when he would speak to me throughout the evening, he would move his arms about, he'd put them out to his side, he'd move them back and forth, he'd raise them up and down. He was talking about being in severe pain, but I would describe the way he'd move his arms and such as basic body mannerisms and basic interpersonal interactions. His hands, his arms, everything moved completely normally when we would speak. There was no favoring of that shoulder or anything to indicate, other than what he was saying through physical action, that there was any type of injury there that I observed.
Now, at some point, I strike that. During this time that you were with him...
Okay, we're going to get back to that. Pain is, we consider that in EMS and medical terms, pain is a vital sign. Okay, so vital signs are generally objective. And when I say that, it is something I can prove with something backing it up. In other words, I feel like my pressure's high. I feel like my pressure's high. This is a complaint we get all the time. But I can take your blood pressure. I can measure it with an instrument. And that is an objective assessment of that particular piece. Okay. Your pulse. I feel like my heart is racing. I can take your pulse and I can tell you if it's a lower number or a higher number, if it's racing or not. I can, this hurts me. I can look at, my hand hurts me. I can look at your hand. If there's an injury, I can see that that injury would cause pain. If there's swelling or heat or even any kind of variance in the way your hand is, I can see an objective piece of the pain. But pain is subjective. It cannot be measured really objectively. A lot of people, their blood pressure will go up, their heart rate will go up if they're in pain, but sometimes it will not. If you have somebody who has chronic pain, they do not, their body adjusts to that pain. And when they say they're in pain and there's no objective signs or symptoms to back that pain up, you have to medically believe them that they're in pain. So if I were assessing Daryl Brooks, I would take down his story. If I had access to the video of the incident, I would do that. I would just take down his story. He says he's in pain on the right shoulder. I would do that. I would assess physically the right shoulder. I would take a pulse in the lower part of the extremity. I would attempt to move or maneuver or, keep still or, assess and or treat that particular body part. I may not be able to back up the fact. Okay, so they took x-rays to see if anything was broken, any bones that would cause pain or physical problem with the shoulder. There was no physical problem with his shoulder that could be seen on an emergent test. Therefore, and since they already know that the actual story isn't backed up with the proof of the incident, that there's disconnect. Okay. So it's subjective. It is a vital sign. You do have to depend on the person saying they're in pain. He can still be in pain, but there's nothing wrong. That physically needs to be handled. That's the bottom line.
And he was getting medically cleared.
Plus he's
First of
totally
all, did he get medically cleared?
Whatever.
Yes, he did.
Objection, speculative.
He didn't need to be...
Hold on. Overrule. His answer may stand.
Did he need any treatment while at the hospital?
No.
No, he was checked out. The doctor came in and looked at his shoulder. I do not believe any medications were given. There may have been, I believe they took an x-ray to check it, but he was ultimately cleared and turned over to police custody.
And during the time that you were with him while he was getting medically cleared, what type of conversation were you having? Was it general conversation, or were you talking to him about the loitering?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
The conversation was general. Mr. Brooks asked several times if I would give him more information as to why he was in custody, and I would continue to tell him it was for the loitering violation. But the conversations were mostly, we talked about sports. The Green Bay Packers had played that day. We talked about the game. I remember him telling me that baseball was his favorite sport, and things of that nature. He was upset that the Packers had lost the game. So it was general conversation, not related to why he was specifically in custody.
At some point, did you decide that you were going to try to talk to the defendant about at least the loitering incident?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Relevancy.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Do you know approximately what time that took place?
11:04 p.m.
And how did you approach this interview? You've now been with Mr. Brooks for maybe 5 hours. Would that be fair?
Yes.
How did you decide to approach this interview with him?
Objection, leading.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
I just explained to Mr. Brooks that I simply wanted to speak with him about why he was in the neighborhood where he was discovered that night, what was going on, what led to him being there, and that I was just looking to have answers to that if he was willing to provide them.
And was Mr. Brooks in a room that had the ability to record the conversation that you had with him?
Objection, I don't consent to being called on there.
Overruled. You may answer.
No, not in the manner we would if we were at our typical police departments. Our police department would have a camera mounted in the corner that would record audio and video. They did have a security camera, but it had no audio capability.
So what did you do?
I utilized my department-issued phone and recorded the audio of the interview that way.
So you had the audio on your phone and the visual, or there was a visual recording. Is that true?
Yes, so the audio was on my phone, and then the visual recording was through the hospital security system.
Bless you. So they didn't marry up with one another, correct? I mean, in terms of, I should strike that. You couldn't play the audio with the visual. They're two different recordings.
Yes.
Okay. Who else was with you during this interview?
At that time, Detective Ben Stern from my department was with me, as well as 2 federal agents from the FBI, Agent Mary Davidson and Agent Jeremy, I believe it's Pilichowski.
Why were they there?
So the FBI came involved in the investigation early on because we were not certain at that point whether or not this was a terrorist incident.
Good point.
So how did it work? Were they in the room and then Mr. Brooks was brought into the room, or how did that work?
Objection, I don't consent to being called that name and is leading the witness.
Over the list, to the names sustained as to the form of the question.
How did you all get into the same room?
So I was in the room waiting for Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks was brought from another room by Detective Stern. At this point, the audio recording on my phone was already running. I believe the 2 FBI agents were with me in the room, and then, like I say, Mr. Brooks was escorted in by Detective Stern.
Did you introduce yourselves? Well, you had been with Mr. Brooks previously, correct?
Objection.
Yes, I had.
Overruled, he may answer.
Yes, I had.
Okay. Had he been introduced to Detective Stern already?
Yes, he had.
Okay. And how about the 2 FBI agents?
It was at that point that they introduced themselves to Mr. Brooks.
What was his reaction to that when they introduced themselves?
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled, he may answer.
I'm very surprised. He said the word FBI, in the form of a question. I could tell his tone was very surprised. It wasn't as calm as he had been. He seemed concerned, uneasy, and within about a minute after stating that, he questioned the agents further as to whether they were really FBI agents, and he was surprised to see them there, and he had never actually seen an FBI agent before, so he was definitely surprised, and I could tell he was uncomfortable.
Did you record the entire conversation you had with the defendant?
Yes, at that point, all that is on recording. At that point, yes.
And have you had the opportunity to review that recording prior to today's date?
I have.
I would like to admit Exhibit 81 for the
Objection.
court. It is the audio interview of the defendant that took place on November 21st, 2021. It's previously been addressed by this court.
Objection.
Remind me how long it is again.
Your Honor, the entire video is 25 minutes approximately. I'm asking to play from 4 minutes and 25 seconds to 14 minutes and 25 seconds approximately. Well, it would be 10 minutes.
I presume you'll have questions regarding that once you play it.
Correct.
All right. Given that it's just before 5 o'clock, I'm going to stop for the day. We can pick up with this tomorrow.
That is going to be.
You can put down for the moment, and I will have our instruction for the jurors.
The first parts of where he is spinning his story right then and there, we're going to get to see that. Okay, she's going to give them their
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, do not begin.
don't talk about this thing. Wow. Decompress time for sure. Okay. Daryl for sure is starting to come apart at the seams here. He is not wanting Detective Carpenter to say anything. He wants him to be quiet. How many times, if we had taken a shot for how many times he said, "Don't call me by that name," even though it's on his ID. He told it to them when he lowered himself to the ground, pop, all this other stuff. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see that. Seeing that when he was on that porch and seeing that in that video, and then having him start spinning the story that he was slammed to the ground and it went pop. I can't wait to hear it when we're listening at the hospital interrogation, or I guess it wasn't an interrogation at that point, but whatever you call it. Anyway, like, comment. I know these are coming a little sporadically. My schedule's a little tight. We had somebody leave work, so we're trying to fill in the schedule. We are 24/7 at that location, so got to try to cover those shifts where even our supervisors are covering shifts, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, and this is Patty Jo. See you next time, and I know it's going to get even more hot and heavy. We got through a lot of boring stuff today, so that was kind of fun. See you later. Bye.